Hello again.
I see errors.
You see some errors.
That's never a good sign.
It's never a good sign. So let's address these errors.
What are they?
First, this guy. This guy is new.
Yeah.
Previously we had the other two, but this
Yeah.
guy is new. And it's an easy problem to fix.
Okay.
The problem is that we have a list of items,
Okay.
and React doesn't know how to identify the list. I mean, suppose that the
so
items...
you need like a unique property or something, basically.
Yeah, suppose that you reordered the items in the list, which
Yeah.
is not something you can do in our app,
Yeah.
but suppose that you could.
Okay.
Then React needs to know that the items have been reordered.
Yeah.
Or even, suppose that all the items have the same
Identifier or same name, so you
the
need
same name, like that.
You need okay, so you need an identifier for the same reason that we had it in JSON.
Yes, we had the identifier in JSON because of this case. You have multiple items with the same description, but they are different. And they have different identifiers, but we are never using the identifier here. And React is complaining that each child of a list should have its own key property.
Okay.
And then that's what we are going to give it. We can say key equals, and that's a property.
Yeah.
And then the property is
JavaScript
go back to JavaScript.
Item.identifier. Okay, that's easy.
And then reload.
Is that it though?
And refresh. And we got rid of that error.
Yeah.
Now,
I can ignore those. I don't mind rendering stuff that's discouraged.
This is just discouraged, and this is also just discouraged. This is a conscious decision to make things simpler on your setup, on your machine. So we are going to leave this be. And this is just saying that our decision to mount the application right in the body was a bad one.
Idea? Yeah.
So
see, I told you.
Identifier application. This is what we had, right?
Yeah.
And then the query selector here is the identifier application.
Yes. And
there you go. We got rid of everything. That was annoying. Okay. Our plan for today is to get some real data from the server.
Yeah. I don't like the sound of fake data. Enough fake stuff going around the world.
The way to get data from the server is to use a JavaScript method called fetch.
Okay. So this is also a callback method, or is it just like a normal function that you can write in Java or Python or something?
I have no idea what you mean by callback, but this is just a regular function.
So callback, from my understanding, is basically like, can you scroll down? Like this function here, okay.
This function is a callback.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's expecting something in return, like whatever you have inside, it gets called back to that variable. Right?
Yes, that's how JavaScript used to be. There was this thing called XML HTTP request.
Okay.
Remember back in the days when people called new websites Web 2.0?
Yeah.
And there was this thing called Ajax.
Ajax, yeah.
Yeah,
Ajax
the
request.
X in Ajax was for this guy.
Okay.
And it used to be like this. I don't remember the specifics, but you used to have to say something like request from server. I'm making this up.
Yeah.
But then you would request some URL like items.
Something like that, yes. That is what I remember.
And then you would have to pass it a callback.
Yep.
I'm using something like data from server.
This is something that I did, like, I don't know, 4 years ago? 4 years ago. Is 4 years ago a generation ago now?
It's 15 generations ago in JavaScript land. Yeah, so it used to be like this, but then suppose that you have to do 2 requests, then you have to do one, and then you have to do another, and suppose you have to do 5 of them.
Yeah, I remember.
In sequence, right? You have to do one, and then the next, and then the next. You see a problem?
Yeah.
This code is hard to read.
Yeah.
Well, there now exists a new thing in JavaScript that gets rid of this problem. You don't have to use callbacks. Callbacks are just functions, okay? Functions that are called back from whatever you are doing. So if you're requesting data from the server, you're called back with the data from the server.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was like, that's how asynchronous requests work, like getting data from a server.
Oh, we will see. We will see. Yeah, in fact, and this was a callback as well because map was calling back to our function with the data being the item.
Yeah.
So this was a lambda or a callback function.
Yeah.
And this was the function that was being called with the callback. Anyway, okay. There is a newer way of getting data from the server.
Easier way now.
Yes, it's called fetch, and you still pass the URL. So you can see that this matches what we had on the server.
Yes.
For this, right? Oh, and look at that.
What?
I forgot this code here, and I committed it.
That's not good.
Yeah, got rid of it now.
So, okay, can you scroll up? I have a question. So here, it's the server. So the server knows what like it's localhost / items. Yes. What about when you're doing it in index.html when you're writing fetch?
Can I put the two side by side? Let's.
I don't. I'm sure there's a way.
I'm sure there is a way, but I don't know. Anyway,
tedious.
Yeah. So here, when you are here, it knows it's the local host, whatever server you're running.
Exactly. So it knows its URL. But what about here?
Here, if you don't say, you could say HTTP localhost at 7,000.
Okay.
But if you don't, then by default, it's going to go to the same server that is here.
Oh.
So you could be explicit, but it's better to be implicit because if I change the port or if I again late.
Ironic, but okay.
Later we are going to go to deploy this to todoose.jaduuse.com, and it's not even going to be in this port.
Yeah, so
it's fine. If we aren't explicit, then we are flexible, which is better. Are you confused by this?
No.
Okay, does it make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
I just have I remember the Python saying like explicit is better than implicit, so that's contradictory. But yeah, this makes sense. It's more flexible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we need to say the method.
Yeah.
And I believe that's how you say the method. But
get,
that's the method. But guess what? Get is the default, so I don't have to say anything.
Okay.
Great. Now, this is something that may take a while to do, right? When you get data from the client to the server, you have to do a network request.
Yes.
In our
Which
case,
can take time.
Yeah, we are running on my machine, so it's going to be fast.
Yep.
But suppose that this is on a server on the other side of the world.
Exactly.
This may take a while.
Yeah, there's a latency problem.
And let's understand how JavaScript executes your code. To understand this, I can currently scroll and I can select things and it all works. So let's write a while loop that loops forever and doesn't do anything. So it now loops in forever and it hangs the page. I cannot select
your UI
things
is
on
screwed.
and you cannot see, but believe me, I'm trying to select, I'm clicking, I'm trying to select, and the page is non-responsive.
Yeah. I will give you a better indication. If you try to do something else, let's say.
It doesn't do. I'm hitting return and nothing happens.
Exactly.
So the browser is now stuck. I can still open other tabs.
That's okay because that's a different thread,
Yeah, but this thread, this tab,
is screwed.
It's crashing. And eventually, I think I will get some browser warning saying that this tab is taking too much resources
or something.
Asking if I want to stop it. Okay, so that's how JavaScript executes your code. So if there's something that takes a while, like this loop, it just hangs in there and it freezes the whole browser, or at least the whole tab. Not what we want, right?
Definitely
so if this request is going to the other side of the globe and taking 5 seconds, I still want the page to work while it's doing that.
Yep.
And that's why we don't say just const data from server
equal to fetch.
Equal to fetch something.
This will take a while,
Because this would need to return
something
for the next line to execute.
Yes.
Well, the first solution, as we said in the beginning of the episode, was to say, okay, so I don't return the data right away, but I will give you instead you give me a function that I will call when I'm done.
Yeah.
And that was the callback function.
Yep. The data from server function.
Yes, the data from server is the argument to that function.
Yes.
But then there was the callback hell problem. That is the nested
callbacks. Yeah.
The nested
Not
callbacks.
a fan.
Yeah. Okay, so Fetch has a better solution for this. One that takes in account both the fact that it takes a while and that you don't want callbacks. And it's a new JavaScript feature called Async Await.
Finally, they came up with this.
Yes. Well, we can only do this asynchronously.
Yes.
We can only fetch asynchronously.
Yes.
There is no way for us to fetch synchronously.
Yeah.
Fetching synchronously being data from server being returned.
So the idea of using asynchronous requests here is that this request, whatever I want from the API is actually executed on another thread. That means the UI, which is running on the main thread, does not crash. It can continue. And when I get the data back from whatever server I have, that thread can now join the master, and now my UI will be updated with the data that I have now.
That's almost exactly correct. Except
what did I get wrong?
Except that you said the word threads. So if you know about threads, if you have heard of threads before, they're just different lines of execution.
Yeah, I will clarify. This is something from another architecture that I'm borrowing. This is not a platform independent thing that I said.
Exactly. And in JavaScript, it doesn't work like that at all. In JavaScript, there is only one line of execution, only one thread, ever. And that is why the browser doesn't know how to do anything when this while loop is running. Because there is only one thread of execution, ever. Only one, ever.
So how does the async request actually work?
Well, the asynchronous request works like this. First, you issue the request. So this would be synchronous, okay? This doesn't work in JavaScript.
That's fine.
So I'm going to remove this. So when you start the request, you wait for it to finish. And while you're waiting, the thread is free to do other things. So there is only one thread, but it can wait for events to come in.
Yeah, that being my point, like how the event of getting the data has to be executed somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's in a different thread with respect to Chrome's implementation, to the implementation of Google Chrome, but not with respect to the JavaScript execution.
Okay, fair.
Okay, if you didn't understand this last 5 minutes, don't mind. It's only for people who have heard of parallel programming, concurrency, and threads.
If you did, good on you. It's a good concept to learn.
Yeah, but let's get back to getting data from the server. Well, we want to do this asynchronously.
Yes.
And async is a keyword in JavaScript that we can use to say that we want to do some stuff asynchronously. So there is now some code that we are going to run that is asynchronous.
Yes.
When we want to do something specific that is asynchronous, we'll do await. So await for this fetch to
finish,
end. And then we can write code like we did before, data from server. Now, what JavaScript is doing under the hood is writing that callback we saw before. Under the hood, that's what is happening. It's rewriting the code for us. But we don't have to think about it this way. We can think about it as if we were writing this synchronously. And JavaScript is doing
it all automatically
for us. Okay, how do we write some block of code that is asynchronous? Well, a block of code needs to be a function. And the function could even take arguments, but in this case it doesn't. So let's call this function get data from server, for the lack of a better name. And we can declare a function like this in JavaScript. This is how you declare a function.
What is that?
This is where you would put the argument. So if we had some argument for this, like argument, it would go here. And if we had an argument, we could even get rid of the parentheses. But because we don't have any arguments for this one, we need the empty parentheses.
And then you will write the function in the block.
Yes, and in this function, we are going to do this work. And this is how you write a regular function in JavaScript, okay? But if we want to do await, this function needs to be special. It needs to be asynchronous. It needs to be capable of that rewriting we were talking about. This is how you write an asynchronous function. That's it.
That's easy.
That's easy. So anytime you want to use await, you have to be in async. because JavaScript needs to know, yeah, I'm going to rewrite with callbacks and everything up to this point.
Yeah, okay.
And if we don't, then IntelliJ says, oh, you can only do this in an async function.
Yeah.
And then you can even make the function asynchronous
automatically,
just using IntelliJ.
Okay.
In fact, if you want to do this, what you have to do is in Mac you have to say option enter, and then it gives you suggestions, make function async.
Yep.
Okay, this is how you get the data from the server.
Yeah.
And this is going to be the JSON, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to call this JSON from server or whatever.
That's it. That's good.
Now we want to parse that JSON. Yeah. And previously we did that with JSON parse.
Yeah.
But note that this is not only the JSON from server. This is a lie. This is the response
technically,
from server. Yeah. And I'm going to call it just response.
Yeah.
Why am I bringing this up? Well, because the response is not just the data, but it's also things
multiple things. Yeah.
The status,
you have
the
headers.
There's a whole bunch of things that comes from the server.
Yeah.
And we are only interested in this JSON, right? So this is the whole response.
Yeah.
We are only interested in the JSON. So data from server is the response JSON.
Yes.
Now, there is something interesting about this. The parsing of the JSON from the server is also asynchronous.
Okay.
For technical reasons. Yeah.
So this is not related to what you just said. Data from server is now a string that is a JSON, or is it a JSON object? Because you called response.json.
Excellent question. So yeah, this method, it's not returning a string.
So it is parsing it for you.
It is, yes. This line here we had parsing the JSON. It's equivalent to this one. So this JSON.parse thing is being done in here somewhere, and this is the real data. So this is the real fake data, the one that was parsed, the JavaScript data. That's the data from server.
Yep.
But there is a final catch. The JSON thing may also be asynchronous.
Yeah.
Because the server is, for performance reasons, people want things in the internet to be fast. For performance reasons, the server may send this data later. It may send the status and the headers right away, so that the browser can do something with it, and then it sends the data later.
I think one of the cases would be when you have like a lot of data to actually send back. I'd send it in chunks, or I'd send it delayed when I know the network is free or something like that.
Yeah. So the implication of that is that this JSON parsing is also asynchronous. So it also has
that is tedious now. Like that is actually tedious.
Yeah. But then we have the data from the server.
Yeah.
And then we can do this rendering.
Yep. So all of this goes into the async request itself.
Yeah, I'm putting everything here because
that's why you have it.
Yeah, because that's where I have the data.
Yeah. Okay.
But then I define the function and still have to call it, right? Yeah. So I'm going to call it get data from the server just once right here.
That's right.
And let's see the whole code right here. So yeah, this is kind of a lot of things going on, but yeah, we are getting the data from the server, parsing the JSON, and then building the whole thing.
Building the list itself. That's good. Let's try to run it.
Start. And now, what do you expect to see here when I refresh?
An empty list.
Why?
Because the server doesn't have descriptions through Postman.
Yes.
Wait, actually, can you go here? I will find out. Can you go to server.java? Where was the list again?
The list is right here. It's empty. Anytime we restart the server, we get an empty list again.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So here, when I refresh this page,
it should be empty.
It should be empty, or even it should hang forever because that was the tab that we crashed before with an infinite loop. Yeah, this is better, empty list.
Yeah. Okay.
But we can come here to Postman and do some post requests to create some items. And then we come here to this request and we can see some items there.
There's more items, yes.
But this doesn't update automatically. No. We would like that to update automatically, right?
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Well, let's come back here and we can say in the JavaScript, we can say, okay, you're going to get the data from the server right when you start. Okay. But also, after rendering,
you do it again.
Wait for a timeout. Okay. The timeout may be like 200 milliseconds, let's say.
That's 2 seconds too short to do it. Or actually, yeah, might as well.
Yeah, that's 200 milliseconds, which is a good time.
Okay.
Okay. So you wait for that time, and then you call
get data from server.
Get data from server again.
Okay.
This is interesting, right? I'm using this function, which is data as an argument.
Technically a recursive call, but not actually a recursive call.
Yeah. So
it's a repeated call.
We are calling the get data from server here, but we are not putting the parentheses. That would be incorrect, because that would be, if we put the parentheses here, we are calling ourselves again immediately. That would be a real recursive function. Oh. What we want is to let set timeout call that function for us.
Okay.
Maybe another way of writing this is as a function like this.
Yeah, actually a function, yeah, okay. Yeah.
In some ways, I like this better.
Cleaner. Oh yeah, JavaScript has promises. That's how callbacks work.
Yeah. Under the hood, if you ever hear the word promises, under the hood, fetch is returning a promise, and await is realizing that promise or parsing that promise. And this is the result of the promise. If you ever read the documentation about Async Await and fetch, you're going to see the word promise
a lot of times.
A lot of times.
A lot of times. A lot of it just came screaming back at me.
Okay, now we need to restart the server.
Yes.
And then let's go back here to Postman just to see that if we restart the server and send the request again, then the list is empty. And in the browser, we can refresh, and we see that the list is empty. And now let's see this everything side by side, okay? Because this is going to be super cool. We are going to create some items, and we see the items popping in the browser right away because of that loop that is refreshing the list every 200 milliseconds.
Yep.
And reflecting the GET request here in Postman, if we do the GET request, we can see a list of items.
Yes.
And that is being refreshed in the server as well. Okay, that was getting real data from the server.
Yep. That's actually another job done. We can close the pull request that we started.
I believe so.
No, there's one more thing left.
Yeah, to add this, to make this plus button do something.
Yep.
But that's really easy. What we want, currently, if you click on the plus button, it doesn't do anything. But we can.
How about you go to this, just because I'm picky, just click on that, that's done.
Well, if we want to do that, we may just create a commit for this, which is easy. Let's review what we are committing, because last time I had it commit. I committed these things that I shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's removed.
But everything else seems good.
Yeah.
So here, what we are doing is render real list with real data coming from the real server. Okay. And I may just come here and push for you to see that on the pull request. The pull request render real list with real data coming from the real server.
Yeah. And then we can add functionality for the plus button.
Yes. So the plus button, it's being rendered right here. Currently, it doesn't do anything. We can click on the plus button, it doesn't do anything. But we can assign some action for it to run on click.
Yep.
And this action is going to be some JavaScript code.
Yep.
That's why the braces. So this JavaScript code is going to be, please do a fetch of the item's URL.
Yeah.
But this time I need the method, so I have to look up the MDN documentation for fetch real quick, because I don't remember how to say the method post. So MDN fetch post request. using fetch. Okay, I had it right.
Method it is.
Yes, you have to say method, and then you have to say post.
Yeah.
And what this part is doing is the same as what we saw here in Postman when we selected the verb to use. Well, I'm selecting post. I didn't have to do it here because get was the default. But here I have to be explicit and say, please do this part. And I think that this will work. Let's see.
Should, because that's all you need.
Refresh. Empty list again, and it's doing the fetch again and again and again and again. That's bad. Not what we want. We only want to have this to happen on click.
Wait, I thought you.
Yeah, what I just wrote here is very wrong. What is happening is, remember when I said that if I had the function just right here like this, it would call the function right away? Well, that's more or less what is happening here. So we are rendering this component. React is rendering this component, which is calling fetch, and this is calling it right away. It's calling it fetch right away. So it's performing the post right away, which then updates.
Every time, yeah, that's fine.
It then updates the list, which updates the whole component, which makes this run again and again and again, because React keeps rendering and rendering and rendering. I don't want this to run right away. I only want this to run when you actually click on the button.
Oh, okay. So you need to make it a function, that's all.
That's all. I just need to make it a function.
Okay.
Arrow functions are unsupported by current JavaScript version. I think this is incorrect. Yeah, it was a IntelliJ thing, I suppose. And I asked it to change the version of JavaScript that it currently thinks my project is using. So if I come here to where is it? I don't even know. So there is some project configuration for the version of JavaScript that you are using, and it had a previous one that didn't support arrow functions, but only in this context. I have no idea why, but in any case, the error was an IntelliJ thing, because this is correct. This is now a function that when one click happens, it will call the function, which will then do the fetch, but only when we click the button.
Yeah, that's better.
That is better. So now let's refresh the server, refresh the application, click on the plus button, and we see the items popping in.
Okay, that's better.
And now let's commit, add action to
plus button.
Plus button.
Done.
Commit and push. And
that's that. Go to the pull request.
Add action to the plus button. Okay, so that is good for now.
Yeah.
I think
just merge the entire branch now.
Oh yes, we can.
Merge the pull request.
Yeah,
just scroll up and click that.
Yes, we have done everything. We have done everything we can do in the client for now.
Yes.
In terms of JavaScript and HTML.
Yeah.
We'll do some styling. Yeah. Some JavaScript. Some CSS. It
doesn't look that good.
Yeah, because this doesn't look good. We'll do some CSS on the next video.
Yeah.
All right.
That sounds good.
See you there.
See you.